inviting me to a lecture for the researchers and students at Hussein Technical University, a place where vitality and creativity of a young generation flourish. It is my great pleasure to talk about Japan's modernization process today. I would also like to express my sincere appreciation to the audience attending my lecture behind the screen. Now, as an introduction, I'd like to talk about Japan-Jordan relations. Japan-Jordan relations have developed as a strategic partnership based on the solid foundation of the traditional friendship between the imperial family of Japan and the Hashemite royal family. His Majesty King Abdullah has visited Japan 12 times officially at least, and the current Emperor of Japan visited Jordan twice during his crown prince period. I'm really glad to see that through these mutual visits, the imperial and royal families have developed close relations. In 2019, Emperor Naruhito acceded to the throne as the 126th Emperor of Japan, and it was our great honor to have His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein bin Abdullah's attendance at the enthronement ceremony in the palace in Japan. Japan has been working closely with Jordan as an important, stable, and stabilizing force in the Middle East. This strategic partnership can be seen, for example, as the latest one in the Japanese Foreign Minister Motegi's visit to Jordan last August, and in the Japanese Foreign Minister's strategic dialogue with His Excellency Minister Safari. Of course, we have been cooperating and implementing diverse projects in the economic and development fields, ranging from water and energy sectors, tourism and business fields, to humanitarian assistance for refugees. Japan also cooperates with Jordan in the cultural and academic fields to bolster people-to-people exchange through programs such as Japanese governmental scholarship for Jordanian students. Recently, 3 students have left Jordan for Japan to start their master's degree in Japan as scholarship students, and 2 students are currently waiting for their departure in this month. Each year, several Jordanian students are selected to continue their master or PhD studies in Japanese universities, spending 2 to 6 years in Japan through the full scholarship program. We are happy to see the fruits of scholarship reflected in Jordanian alumni, being great leaders, professors, and citizens who contribute to the development of both Jordan and Japan. For example, Dr. Sanad Bushnak is an expert in advanced technology and semiconductors, who is using his expertise to promote collaboration between Japan and the Middle East. Dr. Bushnak was awarded the Japanese governmental scholarship through the Japanese embassy in Jordan in 2007. He pursued higher education in Japan and obtained master's and PhD degrees in electrical engineering from the University of Tokyo in 2012. At only 34 years of age, Dr. Bushnak holds several worldwide patents in his field. He has been engaged in designing state-of-the-art flash memory chips in Toshiba Memory Corporation that are used in data centers and smartphones worldwide. Might be in your phones right now. Dr. Bushnak received royal recognition in 2017 from His Majesty King Abdullah at the World Science Forum, which was organized by UNESCO and the International Science Council, and attended by more than 3,000 scientists and decision makers from all over the world. Dr. Bushnak is also actively engaged in connecting elite young minds in the Middle East with Japan. On the other hand, however, at a social level, Japan may be viewed as a distant country in the Far East with little in common with Jordan or Jordanians. Therefore, I believe that many of you have never seen the Japanese history in a comprehensive perspective. Today, I would like to talk about the history of Japan and the efforts of Japanese ancestors that made it possible to create today's modern Japan, which you sometimes call the another planet. The most important message from me today is that it is not something on the other side of the planet, other side of the Earth, or another planet. Japanese experience can be reinforced for Jordan in its pursuit of further development and prosperity in the future, because we have loads of similarities as non-Western partners struggling to realize peace, development, and prosperity with scarce resources. History can tell you many, even though it seems to have happened in a place far away. This is an interesting point of history, as well as a reason why we should have it. We should learn it, even if you are measuring in something seemingly different. Now, I'd like to talk about Japanese modernization and its significance. Japan is one of the model cases among the non-Western nations that achieved modernization and economic development with preserving its own culture and tradition, and enjoyed its benefit without losing tradition and identity. I want to make this lecture a learning experience for you studying at Hussein Technical University, and look forward to seeing you play an essential role in the future of Jordan. Japan's modernization began the end of the long rule of samurai and the opening of the country to the outside world. Since the beginning of the 17th century, Japan has been a closed country for more than 200 years under the rule of Tokugawa shogunate and feudal system, with limited contact with abroad. Now, let me quickly explain you some terms in Japanese history. Shogun is the title of the military dictators of Japan during the rule of samurai, warriors, and ruling class of medieval Japan. Emperor appointed shogun, but shogun was usually the de facto ruler of Japan at that time. Shogun created hereditary dictator system for long years based on their families called shogunate. Feudal system is a type of social and political system in which landholders provide land to tenants in exchange for their loyalty and service. In the Tokugawa shogunate, shogun from Tokugawa family provided land to local strong warriors that have their own clans in exchange for their loyalty and services to shogunate. In the mid-19th century, under strong pressure from outside powers such as the United States of America or European countries, there emerged groups of reformists who insisted that Japan needed to be a centralized state to counter these foreign powers. In 1867, with the growing power of the reformist forces, the leader of the Tokugawa shogunate gave up his power and returned the power to rule to emperor, followed by the abolition of shogunate. This was a starting point of so-called Meiji Restoration or Revolution in the year 1868, which paved the way to modernization of the state and economy. Soon after taking power, leaders of the new government implemented a series of innovative policies. They abolished decentralized feudal domain system and established instead prefectures with governors assigned by the central government. They also abolished the traditional class system that divided the people into several classes such as samurai, merchants, craftsmen, and farmers. This basically made all people except the emperor and his family equal. A modern standing army was formed, and later on, Western-style modern state institutions such as cabinet, organized bureaucracy, parliament, and constitution were also structured. The Japanese economy achieved rapid development under the strong initiative of the central government, led by those who learned advanced systems and policies in the Western countries. It was 1871, 4 years after the establishment of the new government, that bold decision was made to send a mission consisting of high-rank government officials to the Western countries to learn Western knowledge. Based on their experience, after returning to Japan, they started to focus on developing new industries through supporting mechanical industry, expanding a railroad network, and developing capitalism. The modernization of Japan that started with Meiji Restoration was actually a turning point of the history. It enabled the rapid development of Japan in the second half of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century. It even laid the foundation of the post-war World War II reconstruction of Japan, actually. Now I'll talk about the importance of human resources or development education. As one of the factors that made Japan's modernization possible, I'd like to emphasize the importance of human resources. The Meiji Restoration was, of course, a revolution for liberalization and democratization. At the same time, it was a revolution in human resources development and management. Talented people got to the selected and assigned to important positions regardless of their social status as a result of abolition of a feudal class system. Based on the meritocracy, these talented and capable people led the modernization of Japan. One of the famous examples is Ito Hirogumi. He was from the lower class samurai of the Choshu clan, the present Yamaguchi prefecture, which was one of the most active driving forces of Meiji Restoration. However, after receiving unofficial but high-level education at a private academy in his hometown and achieved tangible results in important positions in the new Meiji government, he later became the first prime minister and drafted the first modern constitution of Japan. During the dawn of the Meiji era, many talented people arose, but the result for the affluent human resource can be traced back to the high-quality education in Japan in the Edo period, the period before Meiji Restoration, in which people lived for 260 years in peace and stability, and education flourished. During the period, there were schools, clan schools in Japanese Hanko established to educate children of samurai, and private academies in Japanese language, so shijuku, to educate the children of intellectuals. Even the children of ordinary citizens could learn practical skills, such as reading and writing and ethics from books relevant to Confucianism, and elementary mathematics in schools called terakoya in many villages. Surprisingly, literacy rate at that time is estimated to have been 40 to 50% for male adults. After the Meiji Restoration, small schools called terakoya and private academies were converted to elementary or junior high schools. In some cases, government recruited teachers from these small community schools for the newly established primary or secondary schools. As a result, in the 30 years after the Meiji Restoration, almost all children received modern education, regardless of gender, parental occupation, or social status. On top of this foundation, the government introduced modern educational systems and knowledge from overseas. It adopted a three-tier system of elementary, secondary, and higher education from the United States, and centralized educational administration and school district system from France. Teachers in higher education were initially hired from Europe and the United States with large salaries to provide Western-style education in Japan. Later, the government actively sent young people, including women, to study abroad, and upon their return, they replaced foreign teachers. One of the most famous women who studied abroad during the period was Tsuda Umeko. After more than 10 years of study in art and science in the United States of America, she dedicated her life to Japanese women's education. She established an educational institution known today as Tsuda University, one of the oldest and prestigious higher education institutions for women in Japan. In addition, the educational institution first used textbooks from Western countries, but gradually revised them to meet the need of Japanese education. This way, very imported educational systems and content from various Western countries based on its needs, and later transformed them to the form suitable for its society. In other words, internationalization and localization of education took place simultaneously. The national education system contributed to national unity and talented people. The government aimed to form a broad national consciousness and identity through united elementary, primary education, and bolster economy and military power by increasing the academic levels of ordinary citizens. It also focused on higher education to train leaders to lead the government and private sector. People started to recognize the importance of education also. The following remark about education became very, very famous at that time in Japan. Any existing distinction between high and low, rich and poor comes down to a matter of education. It's a quotation of a very, very famous book written by Fukuzawa Yukichi. People accepted the idea, and mainly young people devoted themselves to studying to climb the social ladder to achieve success regardless of their status. As industrialization progressed and demand of human resources in the industrial sector to achieve success regardless of the government expanded secondary education, including vocational and technical schools, to meet the demand. In this way, the skilled human resources development in primary and secondary and higher education met industry needs and led the economic development. Now, I'll speak about Japanese industrialization at that time. The new Meiji government advocated promoting industrialization in Japanese language, Soshokusan Kogyo, and promoted rapid economic modernization through the centralization of power and so securing national income through tax reform. The government established government-owned model factories and employed foreign experts to introduce advanced Western technology into Japan. One of the most famous examples of government-owned model factories was Tomioka Silk Mill in Gunma Prefecture, which was inscribed in the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2014. Established in 1872, it contributed significantly to the production of textile industry. The textile was the primary source of Japanese experts at that time. Actually, foreign engineers played a significant role in the technology transfer, but after peaking in 1875, the employment of foreign workers began to decline, and Japanese engineers trained through the educational system in Japan were able to drive the wheel of economy. Here as well, we can see the internationalization and localization process in Japan. With a government initiative, cotton spinning mills began to open one after another in the mid-1880s. After establishment of government steel mills in 1901, the number of new private steel mills also increased, which led to the rapid expansion of domestic steel production and the development of heavy industry. Comparing the industrial structure between 1885 and 1940, the size of the primary industry sector decreased from 45.2% to 18.8%, and the size of the secondary industry drastically increased from 14.7% to 47.4%. The economic development in Japan at that time can be seen as a transition from importing manufactured products by foreign currency and by exporting traditional primary products such as raw silk and tea to exporting light industrial products, and finally to exporting heavy industry products. This transformation in economic structure is a model of economic growth typically seen in countries with scarce natural resources, like Japan. Another example of interesting localization in Japan can be found in industry and financial vertically integrated business conglomerate organization. A conglomerate is a combination of multiple business entities operating in entirely different industry under one corporate group. As industrialization progressed, financial cliques or conglomerate groups called zaibatsu in Japanese language emerged in Japanese economy. They control the industry and financial conglomerate groups based on family ties, creating an oligarchy where a small group of companies dominate in various core industry sectors. After the financial crisis of 1927 to 1929, the concentration of industrial capital of zaibatsu conglomerate further increased, and they became the dominant driving force of Japanese economy. Actually, they were the heart of economic and industrial activities in Japan at that time. Although the evaluation of organization of zaibatsu conglomerate varies, but at least financial clique system enables the concentration of industrial capital and played an essential role in promoting industrialization of Japan. Japan's reconstruction in post-war World War II period and rapid economic growth in 1960 or 1970s are very well known. However, it would be worth mentioning that fundamental elements that later enabled the post-World War II rapid recovery and reconstruction of Japanese society and economy were cemented during the Meiji period through rapid industrialization and cementalization of capitals, as well as strong human resource development under the global government leadership. So now I'd like to talk about the political process, namely democratization and the development of political parties of Japan. As one of the characteristics of Japanese modernization, I would like to also explain the development of party politics and primary democracy after the Meiji Restoration. It was 9 years before the establishment of constitution and parliament that two major political parties were born from a civil rights movement. Meiji Restoration was in many senses as a social revolution, as I mentioned, because it changed social structures from samurai rule and a strict class system to liberal and democratic direction. This may mean, on the other hand, many people had felt that had lost their places in the traditional social structure, which led to emergence of another form of social group, so-called associations. After the collapse of the samurai ruling system and the dissolution of the class system, many people sought their places in the association where they could cooperate under common interests and goals. Of course, it was a concept that came from Western society. From the association, political organization emerged, the most important of which was Freedom and People's Rights Movement. It was Itagaki Taisuke that led the movement at that time. They submitted in 1874 petition for the establishment of a prosperity elected assembly, popularly elected assembly to the government, in which they criticized the authoritarian government and argued that early establishment of a popularly elected assembly as a forum for public debate. The petition was also represented in the very famous newspaper edited by an Englishman and provided impetus for the freedom and people's rights movement. It especially became active when power of speech attracted attention instead of power of force after the Civil War of 1877. The movement quickly spread to all over the world, so involving not only intellectuals but also farmers who had been suffering from heavy tax. This pushed the government to issue imperial decree on establishment of parliament in 1881, which declared that they would establish a parliament and constitution in 9 years. Following the announcement, two political parties born from the civil rights movement. One is the Liberal Party led by Itagaki and the Constitutional Reform Party led by Okuma Shigenobu strengthened their organization and developed their own programs and policies for 9 years. The Meiji Constitution was proclaimed in 1889. The first general election for the House of Representatives took place in the following year, and the first Imperial Diet was convened. After the parliament opened, the confrontation between the government and the political parties continued, which led to a stalemate. However, the process of compromise for implementation policies such as increased tax made by government understands that significance of the cooperation with political parties. In 1900, Ito Hirobumi, the first prime minister in the history of Japan, and one of the old founding father of Meiji Japan, also created his own party, which increased the importance of political parties and facilitated the expansion of party-based politics. The Russo-Japan War in 1904 to 1905 was also an important historical point for political party development because it left a big amount of financial debt. And to deal with tremendous debt, the government began to seek further support and cooperation from political parties. We could see in the relation between political parties and the government moderate tension and room for cooperation. Since the beginning of the 20th century, a kind of rotation system in cabinet formulation appeared in Japan between Katsura Taro, a powerful political elite with military background on the other hand, and Saionji Kinmochi, a leader on the biggest political party at that time, Association of Friends of the Constitutional Government, who had a liberal political point of view and supported parliamentary government on the other hand. These two figures were alternately assigned to prime minister from 1901 to 1913, one of the politically most stable decades in Japan. As illustrated above, the political parties have steadily developed their organization and influence and become influential political actors in the parliament, which helped them to hold power against the government side. After the beginning of the 20th century, politicians belonging to the existing political clan groups created their party and participated in the political party system, including Ito Hirobumi, as mentioned before. It enables a further development of political party-based politics. In 1918, the first full-scale political party cabinet was formed. In the cabinet, led by Prime Minister Hara Takashi, almost all ministers were appointed from his political party, Association of Friends of Constitutional Government, with just 3 exceptions of ministers of Army, Navy, and Foreign Affairs. In the latter half of the 1920s, it had been almost taken for granted that the 2 major political parties would alternately occupy Prime Minister and Cabinet. Unfortunately, political party politics was once interrupted due to the expansion of the military followed by World War II. However, the legacy of political party politics in Japan was inherited even after World War II, and powerful political parties were revived. World War II had a devastating impact on Japan. Infrastructure in Tokyo and other cities in Japan had been critically destroyed by a series of airstrikes during the war. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were notoriously famous because of the damage from atomic bombs. Japan saw drastic inflation in the post-war period, which put pressure on people's lives. Also, financial cliques called Zaibatsu, who had led Japanese economy in pre-war period, were dissolved by GHQ, the United States occupying forces. However, Despite the variety of challenges, Japanese society could carry out post-war reconstruction, at least partly based on the social system and the economy created by modernization in the pre-war period. In the economic field, Japan recorded economic growth rate of more than 10% in average during 1955 to 1973. In this period, well-educated human resources developed in the pre-war period and with well-developed technology facilitated by public-private partnership in the pre-war period contributed to bolstering economy. Especially, technology of Japanese home applicant companies greatly developed, which led to rising population of three equipment, refrigerator, washing machine, and black-white TVs. Japanese economic growth was furthermore accelerated in 1960s and in 1970s, when rapid transport network between major cities, including Japanese rapid train called Shinkansen, and highways were developed. It can be said that Japan's post-war reconstruction was at least partly based on the modernization of the pre-war period. In the political system, political parties were again formed and rebuilt. The first House of Representatives election after the Second World War was conducted in 1946, which led to the revival of party cabinet, headed by Prime Minister Yoshida Shigeru of the Liberal Party. He had worked as a diplomat and served as a Japanese ambassador to the United Kingdom before the World War II. The election in which women exercised the right to vote for the first time, the birth of 39 female members of the House of Representatives. Now, as a conclusion, I'd like to say Japanese modernization. So now, Japanese modernization, triggered by Meiji Restoration, began with the end of the long reign of samurai and led to the new government's introduction of foreign systems with preserving own culture, especially in the field of political and economic system, as well as development of human resources. The presence of appropriate competent human resources developed in the education system during 260 years of peaceful and stable Edo period was also a major key of Japanese modernization. The drastic social reforms and adaptation of the society would not have been possible without innovative leaders and the social and historical backbones. Now coming back to the Jordan and Japan relations, the two countries are geographically and culturally different in many ways. However, I'm sure that you can find many similarities in our efforts in pursuit of development and prosperity. And I hope my lecture today could provide you with some insight for your future. I'd like to conclude my lecture with assuring that Japan will continue to cooperate with our close friend Jordan in various sectors, including culture and academic fields. I hope this presentation was fruitful for all of you studying at Hussein Technical University. I wish you all the best, and I appreciate your keen interest in this lecture. Once again, thank you very much for your kind attention. So, shukran jazilan. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Shimazaki, Your Excellency, thank you so very much for this rich and incredibly instructive presentation. We'll be presenting questions at the end of the presentation of Ms. Miyahara's presentation. So if you would kindly stay online so that we can ask the questions at the end of the presentation, we would be most grateful. It is now my privilege to introduce Chiya Miyahara, the Chief Representative of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or otherwise known as JICA. Ms. Miyahara has a background in the Middle East and governance. After joining JICA in 1999, she held a number of posts, including Chief of the Afghanistan team, Director of Public Governance and Financial Management Division, and Director of Public Relations Division, in addition to being the Senior Deputy Director General of Middle East and European Department. Currently, as the Chief Representative of JICA in the Jordan office, she is responsible for all programs implemented in Jordan. This is her second assignment here. First one was from July 2005 to February 2008 as a project formulation advisor. Before joining JICA, she worked for a Japanese private company as a systems engineer for several years, and then joined UNDP for 4 years. She has resided in Egypt, the US, Cyprus, Switzerland, and Jordan. Apart from her mother country, Japan, she speaks Japanese natively, is fluent in English, and speaks French and Arabic. Ms. Mihara, welcome. Ahlan wa sahlan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor William. And it's very nice to have this opportunity to share about what JICA is doing in Jordan. And thank you very much, His Excellency Ambassador of Japan, Mr. Shimazaki, for giving me the opportunity to join this very, very important seminar. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Mihara, as Dr. William just introduced. I am a chief representative of JICA Jordan office. And first of all, including my self-introduction, I would like to respond to His Excellency Ambassador Shimazaki's lecture, which just reminded me of my childhood in Osaka rural area. I was born in 1967 and raised there until graduating from university. When I was a small girl, I remember the neighborhood was still poor, not very clean, no good sanitation. And I can say the area was still underdeveloped. But before I left Tokyo to work in 1990, the situation drastically changed and improved. In that sense, I can say that I witnessed modernization of Japan by my own eyes in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. So I'd like to share some of my slides. Oh. Okay, as was introduced by Dr. William, let me first talk about the Jordan and its growth. I have been here for 2.5 years now, and as was introduced, this is my second assignment. The first one is from 2005 and 2008. So I can say that I have been living in Jordan for over 5 years. As you know, that during my first assignment were maybe one of the best moments of Jordan, at least economically speaking. Foreign investment was booming, stock exchange surged, a lot of job opportunities. But after Lehman shock and the upsurge of Arab Springs, in neighboring countries, Jordan has been experiencing very hard time. There are a lot of refugees, high employment rate, especially among youth and women, water shortage, high energy costs, and so on, give very heavy burden on Jordan's growth. So usually when you come back to the country after 10 years, you expect things should be better, but in my experience, it is a little bit different story. Anyway, I don't know how many of you know about JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency. Sorry? Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Okay. But JICA is an organization responsible for most of Japan's ODA, Official Development Assistance, and sovereign loan to our partner countries. As His Excellency Ambassador mentioned, a bilateral relationship between two countries has been very excellent for years, with a lot of exchange of visits of high-ranking officers and figures of both countries. As you can see on the slide, JICA Jordan office has one of the biggest in the, so to speak, MENA, Middle East and North Africa area region. As you can see, JICA started its operation in 1974 in Jordan, already 74 years ago, when we agreed on a yen loan amounting about 3,000 million yen, Japanese yen, which is almost equivalent to 30 million US dollars for expansion of local telecommunication network. In 1985, both countries agreed on technical cooperation agreement and started dispatching young Japanese volunteers to Jordan. Unfortunately, we had to return all volunteers in March 2000 due to COVID-19 and subsequent border closure by Jordanian government. But until then, we had dispatched over 850 volunteers. They supported rehabilitation of persons with disabilities, helped both Palestinian and Syrian refugees in the camp, teaching the importance of environmental conservation or gymnastics, art, or music activities at schools. Please take a look at this slide, which summarizes JICA's support to Jordan. In monetary terms, our soft yen loan is the biggest amount, supporting areas such as telecommunication, construction of Wadi Arab Dam, road improvement, construction of thermal power plant in Aqaba, development of tourism sector in which we constructed Dead Sea Panorama Museum, Karak Museum, Jordan Museum, Old Salt City development, and Karak observation site. Under the loan, we also supported irrigation projects in Mujib and Al Bor area, constructed Al Barka Polytechnical University, and Karak Hospital. In addition to these infrastructure projects, we also provided commodity loans, which were used for buying necessary commodities during the Jordanian dinar crisis. In recent years, our soft loan goes to National Treasury to support fiscal balance and economic growth, which is in line with Jordan's government's policy. In technical cooperation and grant aid, we have done a lot of projects for water sector, such as reducing non-revenue water, rehabilitating water distribution networks, construction of new water reservoir, and policy advice, among others. Also, we have a lot of projects in creating job opportunities, including vocational training and the tourism sector. The special aspect of technical cooperation is exchange of personnel, as you can see on the slide. We have dispatched around 3,000 Japanese experts and mission members.
I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm so sorry to interrupt. It seems that the slides are not advancing, Ms. Miyahara.
Really?
So we're just on the first slide.
Can you see this slide? It's putting the numbers of our cooperation in the past. Can you see it?
Yes, 1974 loan agreement,
Yes,
1970.
right.
Okay, thank you so much. I often have the same issue with my students. I'm usually several slides ahead for my students. So
Anyway, so I was just explaining about the amount of the loans. As you can see, 2,720 million US dollars of the loan support. And I was just talking about grant aid and technical cooperations. As I said, that we submitted the Japanese experts and the mission members amounting 3,000. And in return, we received almost the same number of Jordanian trainees in Japan. So these people and volunteers are now very important for both countries as grassroots ambassador between two countries. JICA does this way probably because of our past experience during Meiji era, as Ambassador Shimazaki mentioned, where we learned and advanced technologies from foreign advisors, but we accommodate it in our own way to further develop our technologies which suit Japanese situation. So put an importance of capacity building of the people, and they will stay after Japanese experts leave the country. So I now change to the next slide. If your slide is not changing, please just let me know. So anyway, I'd like to briefly touch upon what.
Yes,
okay,
can you
good.
please change?
Okay, it doesn't work. All right, I don't know what is happening.
Okay, great. We can see the next slide now.
Okay, maybe it takes time. So, mainly in Jordan, we are implementing 4 main different assistance schemes: ODA loan, grant, technical cooperation, and civil participation. So ODA loans are used mainly for impacting macroeconomic growth, such as big economic infrastructure, while grant is provided emergency and humanitarian related issues. The technical cooperation focuses on capacity development of Jordanian government officials and agencies with support from Japanese experts in different sectors, as well as volunteers working at grassroots level. We also ask civil society to work with us, and private sector participation is our focus on coming years. If I talk about issue related, our focus has 3 pillars. The first one is support for self-reliant and sustainable economic growth. Second, poverty reduction and minimizing social disparities. And the third, regional stability. As JICA is an offshore development assistance agency, we usually work with ministries or government agencies such as NEPCO, PDTRA, WAJ, and line ministries to develop and enhance its capacity to make our support sustain. Our focus area for coming years will be energy and water, tourism, employment, AI and DX, education for vulnerable children and refugees and its host communities. Let me explain some of our activities. I changed my slide. Hope it works.
We're still waiting for it to change.
Okay. So I continue explaining. Let me know. The explanation of strengthening the capacity counseling is already basically it was strong in supply and demand companies. Employment of labor, the private companies how to receive from train them. Another target is career guidance office of 6 pilot projects, 6 pilot universities to have a basic understanding about what is it like to work. For this project, we work with the Ministry of Labor, universities, and King Abdullah II Foundation. I'm moving. I hope now you can see the grant aid project.
Unfortunately, the slide hasn't advanced that I can see. We're still on the ODA loans. Up, there we go. Improvement of Zai water, strengthening the capacity for career counseling for youth. Improvement of Zai water supply system.
Okay. Anyway, I think I can share on to the student in more detail on this my presentation. So the grant rate surprise. If you know about the water treatment plant located north of Salt City, the treated water from this plant is water resources in Amman. They took water in Jordan Valley, which is about 230 sea level, and bringing it up to the treatment plant, which is located around 880-meter high, using 4 big pumping stations. Japan supported this plant about 20 years ago. However, the equipment was getting old and needs renewal. So we decided to replace some water pumps, settlement basin, chemical injection facilities according to WATCH requests. So this project is now ongoing. And now I would like to move next to project. This is a technical cooperation project working with NEPCO, National Electric Power Company. Title is Integration of Variable Renewable Energy into Electric Power Network System and Enhancing Supply Reliability. So this is to improve technical and institutional capacities of related organizations of of Jordan power sector for developing reliable power network system so that we can bring in more renewable energy to electricity grid, which is a financial burden of NEPCO in the future. And it is in line with the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources policy. So this is our technical cooperation project in energy sector. And next one is about the grant aid for construction of the Petra Museum. As I explained earlier, JICA has been working in tourism sector very intensively. The museum is one of the many museums built or rehabilitated by JICA. We, with PDTRA, opened the museum in April 2019 before COVID arrived, and His Royal Highness Prince Hussein attended the inauguration. Now we just started to develop a master plan in the area for establishing more resilient tourism and can be beneficial to all local people. It is particularly important to work different organizations who are working in the area. And my last project is very new, fresh one. This is a technical cooperation with Japanese expert, enhancing community level intervention in maternal health and psychosocial support for children, including refugees. It's very, very long title. Anyway, we now received Dr. Tanaka, a psychiatrist, and has been very active in Great Hansen earthquake in 1995, Great East Japan earthquake in 2011, and Great Sichuan earthquake in China in 2008, supporting the victims of the tragedy and ease their wounds and help them back to the normal life. So this project, with the support from Dr. Tanaka, is aiming at strengthening the capacity of Ministry of Health staff to provide mental and psychosocial support for children and adolescents who have affected by a change of lifestyle due to COVID-19 or immigrating to another country. So this project could be a big challenge because we have to bridge Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education, but we work very closely with these two line ministries for the success of the project. I understand that I'm exceeding my allocated time, but sorry for the technical problem I had. But here I would like to stop my lecture on JICA activities in Jordan. I hope it was helpful and of your interest. And I again with University and Ambassador Shimazaki for giving us this opportunity to introduce our activities in Jordan. Please feel free to ask any questions at the later so that I can accommodate in we are doing. Thank you for hearing.
Ms. Miyahara, thank you so very much for this really interesting presentation of what the work that Japan is doing in Jordan and with Jordan. And so we're very thankful for this information and for what you've presented. Before we move on to the question and answer period, I would just like to mention that we've been joined today by the His Excellency the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of Poland to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Lucian Kapaniński. And so welcome, Ambassador Kapaniński. Thank you so much for joining us and participating in this lecture series. Let's see, there he is, I can see, Ambassador Kapaniński. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, good evening, Doctor. Thank you for your introduction. I would like to thank you for organizing this very important event. And foremost, I would like to thank His Excellency Ambassador Shimazaki and his team for presenting the Japanese development and Jordan. This was very comprehensive presentation. So congratulations of the development of Jordan, of Japan and cooperation with Jordan, which is very needed in this country. And you can see that the education and the political reforms, wisely applied, can bring the very, very, very privileged position that the Japan is currently in. So congratulations on that. And in connection to the question session now?
Yes, we'll be moving to the question and answer section.
That I would like to ask His Excellency Ambassador Shimazaki what, in his opinion, would be, let's say, roadmap for Jordan, the current stage of development to the next level, and maybe how Jordan can implement some of the Japanese ideas in order to develop and prosper in the future. Thank you so much, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Kimisaki, would you like to respond to the question, Ambassador Kapaniński's question about road mapping for Jordan and the vision that Japan has for assisting Jordan in moving to the next level of development?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. And so, Mr. Ambassador Kapaniński, once again, thank you very much for your attendance. And also on this occasion, I would like to express my sincere congratulations on His Majesty's visit to Poland. Very, very successful visit once again. And also, once again, thank you very much for a very, very important question. Maybe it's the most key issue. So maybe roadmap of Jordanian development in the future is very, very important. But of course, also in this regard, I'd like to say my presentation, the most important message of today's presentation of mine to us Jordanian people, particularly Jordanian youth people, is so maybe also from Japanese modernization process, we would like to recognize and emphasize that internationalization and also localization. Therefore, we should keep our historical background and our own identity for also future development. Therefore, of course, a roadmap regarding a roadmap of future development of Jordan, of course, some Japanese experts and maybe JICA experts can advise or suggestion, but maybe Jordan has not so rich natural resources, but Jordan has very, very rich human resources. So as I mentioned, therefore, maybe through some foreign countries' suggestion or support, Jordan people themselves should decide roadmap for Jordanian future development. It's a very, very important. And so also today's message, most important message of today from my side is such kind of, Jordanian, their own decision to roadmap to future development.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you so much.
We have several questions from students, and it's perhaps the question is both to Ms. Miyahara and His Excellency, the Ambassador, about studying in Japan, both at the master's level and the doctoral level. And of course, that goes along with vocational training that Ms. Miyahara was speaking about. So I wonder if you might, Your Excellency, if you might speak a little bit about opportunities for scholarships and studying in Japan. I know there is great interest among students at HTU to do that. So any information, any guidance you could provide would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you very much about student exchange. I think it's youth exchange, particularly student exchange, the most important factor for bridging our traditionally friendly relationship between Japan and Jordan. Therefore, thank you very much once again for very, very important question. And as I mentioned in my speech, also within this year, our embassy selected 5 Jordanian students who could have a Japanese governmental scholarship. So Japanese government, particularly Japanese Monbusho means Ministry of Education, will provide every year 4 or 5 students for governmental scholarship. Through such kind of our governmental scholarship, you can have an opportunity to study in Japan. So either master degree, master class, or PhD, doctor, course. And also through some university agreement. For example, I've heard that, for example, University of Jordan and Waseda University has a kind of exchange agreement. Through such kind of each agreement between Jordanian universities and also Japanese universities, some Japanese university can provide scholarship. Therefore, maybe other information, our embassy, particularly our department or division of cultural exchange, are always ready to provide such kind of information. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ms. Mihara, you had spoken quite extensively on the various projects that JICA and the Japanese government has been implementing over the decades. So one question that we had was about the infrastructure of public services, and and the commitment but on behalf of the Japanese government to continue building a humanitarian bridge between Japan and the Arab world. And it seems that, and this question is coming from Dr. Habib al-Badawi in Lebanon, from a Lebanese university. I wonder if you could either Ms. Mihara or Your Excellency expand a little bit about that on, the Japanese government's interest in building on humanitarian efforts here in the Arab world and in general, and Jordan specifically.
Thank you very much for the question. When it seems humanitarian, JICA is basically working in a development side. So this is why we work together with their counterpart in Jordan side for the capacity building when we talk about technical cooperation projects. And we had a lot of infrastructure projects, and we still ready to do some kind of infrastructure project, but we worked very closely with the Jordanian government. Excellency said that what the Jordanian government thinks is most important, and we are the supporter, and we don't try to lead too much about our counterpart governments. So we advise about what's the best way by our expertise and our past experiences. But basically, we are standing by the Jordanian government's policy on what we are going to do and what they want from us, among other donors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question is for His Excellency Ambassador Shimazaki. Could you explain what you believe are most important for an individual for self-development to be acceptable in a global environment?
Yeah, thank you very much for your very deep meaning of the question. And it's only my view, maybe according to my long years career of diplomat, I would like to say. So sometimes we should be very, very open and so flexible. And also, as for Japanese modernization process, as I said, for example, under Tokugawa shogunate, so about 260 years, country, but also even at that time, very many Japanese were enough curious and flexible to foreign culture, and such kind of curiosity, which was outside world, maybe major restoration, revolution, would not so impossible. And also our personal career, such kind of and openness, and sometimes with great curiosity is very, very important. Very recently, also fortunately this year, one Japanese physician could have a Nobel Prize. And after his announcement of Nobel Prize, such kind of Japanese university professor for physics said, most important thing, most important message, use people is curiosity. Great curiosity is very, very important message from such kind of Nobel Prize winners. Like such kind of curiosity and flexibility and openness is the most important for use people, I think.
A very wise advice and guidance indeed. Thank you so much, Ambassador. We have another question. What do you think the starting point for modernization was? Do you think it was the political setup or economic reform or capitalizing on human resources? What do you think was really the impetus for the modernization of Japan?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So as I mentioned in my speech, maybe Japanese modernization, major restoration was the most important trigger is outside pressure. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, even under Tokugawa shogunate, very many Japanese are very, very curious and open for outside information. And for example, we are very, very carefully following kind of colonization process of other Asian countries, including China or India. Maybe very many Japanese local government would like to have a new political system. Therefore, maybe most first trigger came from political world. And so, as I mentioned, at that time, it's a kind of feudal system. Feudal system is a kind of federal system or localization process. But at that time, to modernize Japanese society, to become a kind of centralized nation, to create centralization is a very, very important process for Japan. Without such kind of political centralization process, maybe our economical modernization or education processes would not be possible. Therefore, political process may be number one trigger, I think.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. I have a question, a personal question that I'd like to put out from a I'm a linguist, so I always look at things from a language and cultural perspective. And for me, I'm very interested in knowing, how does Japan address maintaining its culture, its identity, but still being part of a global economy, an interconnected world. How do you believe that the Japanese people are successful in doing this?
Yeah, it's also very something very, very difficult question to answer. but so I personally think also in this regard, we Japan kind of mixed mentalities. So on one side, as I mentioned, we are always ready to introduce a foreign culture or foreign civilization. But at the same time, on the other hand, we would like to keep our own identity and culture, but mainly because of our geographical position. So needless to say, Japan is a far east country, and it's a kind of island country. So if we would like to contact with outside, we should open our port and airport and cross the sea. But if we would like to close our country, then keep our own very, very domestic mentality. But maybe mainly because of our geographical situation. So historically, we could keep such kind of double track or mixed mentality and mixed direction.
Okay,
but it's on my personal view.
Yeah. No, I think that's excellent. I think geography, from a linguistic point of view, geography often plays a very important role in identity. And you can see that in very small ways and in large ways as well. But I know that I have many students who approach me who are just fascinated with Japanese culture, and especially anime, which for me is still a bit of a mystery, and perhaps one day I will be able to access it in a meaningful way. But just really, I have students that are very, very interested and very eager to start developing HTU's relationship with Japanese universities so they can partake about learning the language, the culture, etc. We have a question about soft power. So how would you assess the influence Japan's soft power has had on its relations with the world generally, and then specifically with Jordan?
Yeah, thank you very much. Also, very, very important question. And I so think so Japanese soft power is a very, very important. Maybe nowadays, so we Japanese, at least after the Second World War, according to Japanese constitution, Japanese most basic philosophy is a very, very peaceful and soft power country. Therefore, in this regard, also our diplomacy, soft power is a very, very needless to say, as you know, not only in Jordan, not only in Japan, and also in Poland, particularly. So Japanese language, so education or Japanese study is very, very active, but mainly because of Japanese Japanese animation's popularity. Very many young people have very, very great interest on Japanese animation and Japanese games, and we would like to utilize also prioritize such kind of material as a very, very wonderful soft power. And also, according to my long years career of diplomat, I would like to emphasize that, of course, also between Japan, Jordan, and between Japan, other European countries, including Poland, we can enjoy very, very good friendly relationship. But maybe if we could have good only political or economic situation, it's okay without mutual understanding through soft power or cultural exchange. Such kind of political or economical partnership can be very, very fragile. Therefore, in this regard, I would like to say, soft power or mutual understanding through soft power, interaction is most important measure for our diplomacy.
Thank you so much. The coronavirus has put the brakes on many activities and many interventions that have gone on throughout the world. We have a question about JICA and some of the projects they were working on. In light of the current pandemic and what we're facing, I know everybody is looking to restart and reinvigorate and escape from the virtual world. I was wondering, Ms. Miyahara, when do you expect JICA to begin to start again a full implementation of its work within Jordan?
Thank you very much. Actually, we are already in full operation. And to be honest, some of the activities are a little bit slowed down. But because of the technology of these days, we work very closely using the different devices. And even though the experts couldn't come to Jordan, they had a very constant contact with counterparts. And now we are receiving a lot of JICA experts and also mission members. So I think, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 Japanese mission members already arrived to Jordan. They came back to Japan healthy. And I spoke about the Japanese volunteers had to go back to Jordan in March 2020. But in this year, in June, three has dispatched the new ones, and we are receiving 5 more before end of this year. So I think the exchange of the real people, not the virtual, but real people, are increasing. And yeah, I think in normal terms, we can say we are on full operation already. And I mean, what we are doing is that the main focus is, of course, the health sector is very important, but at the same time, the COVID-19 has made a lot of bad impact on the economy and employment. So our focus is more on the economic side, and we consult with the Jordanian government and to work basically on the economic side and increasing the job opportunities for Jordanians. So this is the focus point in relation to COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's all of the questions that we have right now. I would like to extend my sincerest thanks to His Excellency Ambassador Shimazaki for his presentation, to Ms. Mihara, the Chief Representative of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, for her presentation, for the questions that you answered, and for your continued work and efforts here in Jordan. And I would like to thank Dr. Shbib for representing HTU on behalf of the President and the Board of Governors. Thank you all so very much. And I wish to thank Ambassador Kapaninsky as well for joining us in this session. Thank you.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
Please, all of you, remember that we will be working on a lecture series for this coming academic year. If anybody has a suggestion or topic, please feel free to send it to me, and we will look at how we can incorporate it into this year's lecture series. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for our guests. I hope everyone has a good evening. This concludes the lecture series for today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.